Right. I'm gonna take some time to learn more about this guy. Here we go. This Google Tag update. It's pretty interesting. Um, see if there's a way for me to flip back to this real quick. Something like that. Um, yeah, just kind of looking around and let's read about this together. I went and watched a video earlier today. This guy, where's my history? One second. Problem is, I'm not 100% sure if you guys are going to be able to see it. I just think I need to actually. So, this is Julius from Analytics Mania. He is essentially talking through the variables. I'm going to put some clips up in a second here. Actually, you know what? I'm going to do it this way. Let's share this with the audio.
Let's take a look. Also, did you know that 85% of you are not subscribed? If you want to stay up to date with Google Analytics, Google Tag Manager, and get
Huge shout out to Julius. This guy really knows his stuff and he's good at teaching
this
it
kind
as
of
well.
videos first, then subscribe to my channel. If you want to install Google Analytics 4 with Google Tag Manager, the installation process will look like this. You go to your Google Tag Manager account, then go to Tags, New, Tag Configuration, and then you select Google Tag. As you can see, the Google Analytics 4 configuration tag that we had in the past is no longer here. So select Google Tag. Then you're asked to enter the tag ID. In this case, you can enter the Google Analytics 4 measurement ID, which starts with G dash and then something. You could also enter the AdWords ID, or you can even enter the actual Google tag. So Google Tag ID can be found in the list of all containers that you have, and then you switch to Google Tags, and here you will find the list of those IDs, and some of them start with GT. However, personally, since I'm working with Google Analytics 4, I will be using the measurement ID. And that ID can be found in the usual place where you could find that before. So you would need to go to Admin in Google Analytics 4, then Data Streams, select your website data stream, and then you copy the measurement ID. So now if I copy it, then I can paste it right here. Then your goal here is to fire your Google tag as soon as possible, and ideally it should be the first tag of Google that you should activate before any other GA4 event tag. So in triggering, you can click anywhere and then select initialization or consent initialization, but normally I select initialization. So this is the basic setup that will install Google Analytics. It will also activate enhanced measurement if you have that enabled in your GA4 property. So let's call this, let's say Google tag, and then you can paste that measurement ID, or you can call this GA config or whatever. The name here does not matter that much. So now click save and let's test how this is working. So I will click preview, then I will enter the URL of my test website. And I see that my tag assistant has connected and the Google tag has fired. Now, if I go to the debug view of Google Analytics 4, I should see the events incoming right here. And here they are. So in this case, the Google tag template kind of replaces the Google Analytics 4 configuration tag that we had before. If you want to set some additional parameters, you can open your Google tag, and then here you can enter either configuration settings or shared event settings. In the section of configuration settings, you should enter things such as maybe the URL of your server-side endpoint if you're using server-side Google Tag Manager, or you could enter some cookie settings, and there are more parameters. Below this video, I will post a link to a documentation where you will find a list of various parameters which are supported and what are the parameter names and what do they mean. Also, there is a new setting for a configuration settings variable, but I will talk about this a bit later in this video. Then there are shared event settings. So if you want to share some parameters across multiple events, for example, a modified page URL or maybe some hit timestamp or something like that, then you can enter them right here. In this
It's really interesting. I'm going to just pause this real quick. I know that I'm going to be, this is one of those things where I'm going to reach out to my clients and ask them if they would like me to explain it to them. But I'll be working on the background, just setting this stuff up. I really think the shared event settings is super interesting because essentially, think of something like user ID, client ID, whatever. I can add that, to the settings variable so that every single time that an event fires, we fetch that information as well. Now he's going to show. I've seen this, before, so there is a little bit of cheating there involved. But I'll say this: um, he's going to show later that you really just want to have that push message at the beginning. So a data layer push that has information that you're going to later use and in variable format. And he's going to show that and explain that. But basically, I'm going to be putting this together for all the clients and then reaching out. It's just a reason to reach out and say, hey, look at this new thing. We probably need to get more out of the system by using these. And this is what I set up. It's kind of like a show and tell.
Section, we also have another settings variable. And again, I will explain it a bit later in this video. However, when it comes to event parameters, there is another list in the documentation of supported parameters. I will post a link to those parameters below the video as well. But for now, let's keep this setup simple. Let's take a look at how should we configure event tracking in Google Tag Manager now. Let's say that I want to track menu link clicks right here. First, I will need to go to Google Tag Manager, variables, and then enable built-in click variables, like that. Once I do that, then I will go to the triggers and we'll create a new link click trigger. So I will click new, trigger configuration, and then just links. Instead of all link clicks, I want to track just some link clicks where the class of the element contains this part right here. So click classes contains this. Let's name the trigger and then click save. Now let's go to the list of tags. Click new, tag configuration, and here we will need to select the good old GA4 event tag that we have already used in the past. However, this part right here has slightly changed. In the past, we had to select the configuration tag, but right now we need to enter the measurement ID. And here I have to enter the same measurement ID that I used in my Google tag. If you forgot it, then you can go back to admin of Google Analytics, click data streams, then click your data stream and copy the measurement ID. So you can either do this or we could do something else. But first, take a quick look right here. When you enter the measurement ID, Google Tag Manager will validate that and it will show if Google Tag was found in this container. So after you enter,
you're going to notice in this video that there's these new features inside of GTM that will show you a check mark if something is validated or not, especially when he starts showing off the event parameter values. That's really, really, really useful in my opinion, especially for beginners to double and triple check their work quickly without having to go into preview mode, without having to look in debug mode or anything like that.
Enter the measurement ID, Google Tag Manager will check the entire container and will look for a Google tag that contains the same measurement ID. But naturally, you will have more than one, maybe more than 10 or more than 100 Google Analytics 4 event tags. So manually entering the measurement ID every time is inconvenient. That's why I would recommend using a variable just for the measurement ID right here. So I will remove this, and instead I will click plus, and then I will click plus right here to create a new variable configuration, and then select constant. Here we will paste the measurement ID, and then I will name this variable, let's say, like that. So now I click save, and this variable will be inserted. Right now, the validation doesn't happen automatically. That's why I will cut it and then paste it again. This obviously looks like a bug, so I hope that eventually Google will fix this. Then let's add the event name. I can call this, let's say, menu link click, and then I can also track several parameters like link URL and link text. So I can either use the settings variable, but again, we will talk about this a bit later. So this time I will just add the event parameter. The first one will be link URL, and the other one will be link text. If you see the check mark right here, it shows that this is a known parameter, or in other words, a supported default parameter of Google Analytics. If you enter some custom parameter, which will still work, then that parameter will not show the check mark. For example, user group or something like that. As you can see, there is no check mark. Now let's set the values. So for link URL, I will use the click URL. And then for link text, I will use click text. In this video, I will not be going too much into the mechanics of how event tracking works in general, because I have other tutorials on my channel or on my blog where I explain that. In this video, I am mainly focusing on the change of Google Tag and the workflow of how event tracking is configured. In the event tag, you can also configure user properties. This section is not available in the Google tag, so you can configure this either in the event tag or in the event settings variable. Now let's go to triggering and choose the trigger that we just created. Now let's name this variable. Click save. Let's refresh the preview mode and test if this is working. And now I will click, let's say, this link right here. In the preview mode of Google Tag Manager, I have the link click. I click the tag that fired, and I see what kind of parameters were sent. And in the debug view of Google Analytics 4, I should also see that event appear. And here it is. I click it, and I see some parameters. Most of them are automatically tracked, but also there are several parameters that I configured myself. Now, in the future, if you decide to add more event tags, the process will be the same. You just go to tags, new, tag configuration, then GA4 event, then you look for your constant variable, As you can see, the validation still doesn't work, but let me test something. Maybe it will work if I enter it just by typing double curly braces. And this time it looks like it does work. So maybe that's a temporary workaround for you, instead of just copy pasting or deleting and adding that variable again. And then you configure your event name, parameters, and so on. And now we'll take a look at settings variables. But before that, first let's take a look at the problem that we had with the Google Analytics 4 configuration tag in the past. Let's say that we have a website. It is a single page application. And on that application, we fire a Google Analytics 4 configuration tag. In that tag, we also set a custom parameter, which will be later displayed as a custom dimension in the reports. In this case, we want to send a page category parameter with every event to Google Analytics 4. So when the visitor lands on an article page, then the page category value will be article. And then if on that page a Google Analytics 4 event tag fires, which uses the same configuration tag, then that event tag will also send the page category with the same value, articles. And then all other subsequent events will do the same thing. However, we're talking about single page application, which means that if the visitor goes to another page, the browser window does not actually reload. It just dynamically loads a new page content, which means that the configuration tag never refires again. So even though the page category changes from articles to homepage, if the event tag fires on the homepage, the page category will still be articles because it inherits the page category from the initial load of the configuration tag. And this was a big pain in the ass. So we had to do a workaround, meaning that we had to configure page category parameter in every event tag as well. And if you have hundreds of GA4 event tags, that becomes quite a manual work. However, this problem can be solved with the new settings variables, especially the event settings variable. Let's go back to the example of my demo website. Let's say that I have asked a developer to push the page category to the data layer, and in my preview mode, I see it as the first message. So here is the page category, and it's a homepage because I am on a homepage. So if I want to apply this parameter to automatically tracked events, and also I want to apply it to all other events that I have in my container, I can include it in the events settings variable. So let's go to Google Tag Manager, then click Variables, and click New in the User-Defined Variables section. Click Variable Configuration, and then look for Google Tag Event Settings. Here I can add the parameter. So let's say I will call it also page category. And here I have to enter the value, or in other words, the variable that will fetch the data from the data layer. So I will click the plus to add the variable, then plus to create a new variable, variable configuration, and let's select data layer variable. Here I will enter page category exactly as it is displayed in the preview mode. Then I will name this variable and click Save. If you want to add more parameters that apply to all events, then you can add them by clicking this button right here. Now let's name this variable, something like that, and then click Save. Now I go to Tags, and I will need to include this variable in all Google Analytics event tags and also in the Google tag. So first, let's start with the Google tag, then click the pencil, shared event settings, and then select the GA4 event settings. So when this variable is configured, then that page category parameter will be applied to events such as page view, which is automatically tracked, file downloads, which are automatically tracked, and so on. You can also see which parameters are inherited from this variable by clicking this button. Now I can click Save. However, if you leave this configuration as it is, you will not solve the problem that I previously explained, because this variable right here will be evaluated only when the tag fires. And in my case, the Google tag will fire just once per page because it will fire on initialization. So if you want to also dynamically fetch the latest value of the page category for all your other events, you need to update your event tags as well. So let's go to the event tag, then click the pencil, and then here we will also add the event settings variable in the event parameters. So when this tag fires, it will fetch the latest values of the settings variable, and that way we will solve the problem that I previously explained. If you have 10 or 20 or 50 tags and you want to benefit from this update, then update all those tags. In the future, if you want to add some parameter to all your GA4 event tags, you will not need to go manually and update each tag separately. Instead, you will just need to go to the variables and then click the GA settings variable and add that parameter here. From that moment, all tags that use this variable will also fetch the latest values of the variables. So let's see how.
So this is the most important part about that, in my opinion, is you get a chance to, on the event level, you can have certain parameters that you want to pull into that specific event because of the nature of it. But overall, if there's something that you need to pass from page to page, or even, from action to action, you can quickly and easily do that with kind of like a global settings situation.
How this works. Click preview, and here the preview mode has refreshed. Here's the message with the page category. Here my Google tag fired, and if I click it, I can also see that the page category was sent. And if I go to the debug view of Google Analytics, I will see the page view. And here I see the page category with the homepage. Now, if I click the link, because I have already configured the menu link click tracking, I will see that in the preview mode, my menu link click tag fired. And in Google Analytics debug view, I will see my menu link click as well. I can click it. And here is the page category. But now let's emulate the situation where the page category changes without reloading the page. I have that event in the data layer. It says the page changed and the category is now articles. So now if I click any of the menu links, it should work properly and fetch the articles page category, not the homepage. Let's check how this works. Here's the new menu link click. I click it. And now the page category is articles. So every time the tag fires, it takes the latest values of the variables that are configured in the settings variable. So this was a huge pain point when you were configuring GA4 event tags, but now this process has been made more convenient. However, there is one catch. As you probably know, Google Analytics can automatically track some additional events like outbound link clicks. So I will scroll down to the footer and I will click an outbound link. This should send a click event to Google Analytics 4. Let's check that in the debug view, and here it is. If I click it and I go to page category, unfortunately, it still fetches the previous value because this page category configuration is coming not from the event tag, but from the Google tag. And Google tag was never refired again on this page. It just fired once on the initialization event. So in this case, a solution for you could be to fire the Google tag on page changed as well, because when Google tag fires, it will fetch the latest values stored in the settings variable right here. And then automatically tracked events such as scroll, outbound link click tracking, they will get the latest value, which should have been articles, not homepage. But if you fire the Google tag several times on the same page, keep in mind that the newly fired Google tag will overwrite the configuration of the tag that fired previously. And I mean that the Google tag will overwrite another Google tag's configuration if in both cases the tag ID is the same. So if Google tag XYZ, which parameters are inherited from this, it is displayed in the preview mode. Then I will name this variable and click save. If you want to add more parameters that apply to all events, then you can add them by clicking this button right here. Now let's name this variable, something like that, and then click save. Now I go to tags, and I will need to include this variable in all Google Analytics event tags and also in the Google tag. So first let's start with the Google tag, then click the pencil, shared event settings, and then select the GA4 event settings. So when this variable is configured, then that page category parameter will be applied to events such as page view, which is automatically tracked, file downloads, which are automatically tracked, and so on. You can also see which parameters are inherited from this variable by clicking this button. Now I can click save. However, if you leave this configuration as it is, you will not solve the problem that I previously explained, because this variable right here will be evaluated only when the tag fires. And in my case, the Google tag will fire just once per page because it will fire on initialization. So if you want to also dynamically fetch the latest value of the page category for all your other events, you need to update your event tags as well. So let's go to the event tag, then click the pencil, and then here we will also add the event settings variable in the event parameters. So when this tag fires, it will fetch the latest values of the settings variable, and that way we will solve the problem that I previously explained. If you have 10 or 20 or 50 tags and you want to benefit from this update, then update all those tags. In the future, if you want to add some parameters to all your GA4 event tags, you will not need to go manually and update each tag separately. Instead, you will just need to go to the variables and then click the GA settings variable and add that parameter here. From that moment, all tags that use this variable will also fetch the latest values of the variables. So let's see how this works. Click preview, and here the preview mode has refreshed. Here's the message with the page category. Here my Google tag fired, and if I click it, I can also see that the page category was sent. And if I go to the debug view of
So what I was talking about earlier is you see this summary on the left-hand side. That message is a data layer push. Notice that there's no tags, variables, data layer. Nothing's attached to this message. This is the first thing that happens when the page loads up. Well, before the pages, the window's loaded. The first thing that happens when you visit that page is this data layer push. And that data layer push is used in the initialization action where the tag fires.
with the page category.
And he's going to talk about how you have to essentially refire the tag in order to pull updated page location information.
Here, my Google tag fired. And if I click it, I can also see that the page category was sent. And if I go to the debug view of Google Analytics, I will see the page view. And here I see the page category with the homepage. Now, if I click the link, because I've already configured the menu link click tracking, I will see that in the preview mode, my menu link click tag fired. And in Google Analytics debug view, I will see my menu link click as well. I can click it. And here is the page category. But now let's emulate the situation where the page category changes without reloading the page. I have that event in the data layer. It says the page changed and the category is now articles. So now if I click any of
So he has an event in the data layer called page changed is what he did. He kind of sped through that.
It says the page changed and the category is now.
So, okay, page category was already there as homepage, I do believe. And then he added another thing to the data layer. So the data layer can have multiple parameters added to it. So he's got this event with the parameter for this guy. So the event page changed needs to fire. He can create a custom event. So CE dash, that would look like this custom event as a trigger. And it could say page, what was it, category? Page changed. Like that. I'm still waking up, y'all. Sorry. All right, so that could look like that. And then I can share this tab. Here. This is what I'm having in mind. Because if you use this and this fires, it's not gonna let me, okay. So now I've got data layer event, and I can use this on that same trigger. So he's got this, if you use the configuration tag, so I'm just gonna do that with him just in case. I don't have an updated version yet, but basically the Google tag, same thing, tomato, tomato. You can make sure that it fires based on this event. So if this tag refires, it's going to pull different information, is what he was saying as well. Okay.
Now articles. So now if I click any of the menu links, it should work properly and fetch the articles page category, not the home page. Let's check how this works. Here's the new menu link click. I click it, and now the page category is articles. So every time the tag fires, it takes the latest values of the variables that are configured in the settings variable. So this was a huge pain point when you were configuring GA4 event tags, but now this process has been made more convenient. However, there's one catch. As you probably know, Google Analytics can automatically track some additional events like outbound link clicks. So I will scroll down to the footer and I will click an outbound link. This should send a click event to Google Analytics 4. Let's check that in the debug view, and here it is. If I click it and I go to page category, unfortunately, it still fetches the previous value because this page category configuration is coming not from the event tag, but from the Google tag. And Google tag was never refired again on this page. It just fired once on the initialization event. So in this case, a solution for you could be to fire the Google tag on page.
So the tag, an event is not tied to this page categorization situation, page category situation. So you have to, since it's tied to the configuration tag, the only way you're going to change it, because it's like a global setting, is you're going to have to refire the tag itself. In my case, it was what I showed you earlier was a configuration tag, GA4 configuration tag. But remember, Google tag is replacing that.
Page changed as well, because when Google tag fires, it will fetch the latest values stored in the settings variable right here, and then automatic track events such as scroll, outbound link click tracking, they will get the latest value, which should have been articles, not homepage. But if you fire the Google tag several times on the same page, keep in mind that the newly fired Google tag will overwrite the configuration of the tag that fired previously. And I mean that the Google tag will overwrite another Google tag's configuration if in both cases the tag ID is the same. So if Google tag XYZ is fired once, and then for the second time Google tag XYZ fires again, then the tag's configuration that fired on the second time will overwrite the configuration that was before. So that's how the event settings variable works. There's also another settings variable, which is for the configuration. That variable can be used in the Google tag, not the event tag. So if you click the Google tag and then you try to edit it, there's a section called configuration settings. You can expand it and you can select the configuration settings variable. The principle here is similar, but from what I've seen so far, most of the business will probably not need to use that because most of the companies, at least the small and medium ones, they will probably be using just one Google tag because maybe they're using just one property. So in that case, manually entering parameters such as cookie, prefix, or something like that is enough to configure just in the Google tag itself instead of creating a variable and then applying it just in one tag. But if you have multiple Google tags in your container, then it might make sense to create a configuration settings variable and then apply it to multiple tags at the same time instead of creating a bunch of different parameters in those tags separately. Looking at the documentation, it looks like Google wants us to use custom dimensions and similar.
So I could have a situation. So I have a client who has like 4 different websites with different uses, but it's on the same domain, right? So they got different subdomains and they're connected. There's cross-domain tracking going on because GA4 does that standard. However, they are also very much in need of certain tracking into different data streams. That's just how they're set up. So they would be a good candidate for what he was just talking about, where I can, instead of having a ton of different parameters on each tag, it's required because that's how they're set up. I could just have configuration settings variable for that particular tag set a certain way. And inside of the settings variable itself, I'll have all my stuff kind of set up for that particular tag. And then I have a separate tag. Let's say it's an e-commerce related, that tag is going to be on the e-com site. those parameters that are in that configuration settings variable will be completely different. And that'll keep me from having to insert a whole bunch of raw parameters in the configuration uh, area here, where it says configuration parameter and value. You could do that, but you got to do that one by one by hand instead of just using a variable that has all that information stored nicely and neatly. Um, it removes the need to, uh, if I needed to use that same information again, I wouldn't have to just go copy paste a whole bunch of stuff. I could just literally plug in the settings variable in like a situation where I wanted to test or duplicate or whatever. I hope that makes sense.
Google tags in your container, then it might make sense to create a configuration settings variable and then apply it to multiple tags at the same time instead of creating a bunch of different parameters in those tags separately.
I'm glad I'm
Documentation, it
rewatching
looks like
this. This
Google
makes
wants
a
us to
lot
use
more
custom
sense
dimensions
now.
and similar parameters in the event settings variable. For example, here we see things such as coupon or items or method, shipping tier, and so on, while the configuration settings variable should be used for more global settings, such as campaign source, cookie settings, and so on. But I did several experiments. So for example, if you set the custom parameter, which is a custom dimension basically, in the
So I love this too, because I can put a lot of stuff that you would usually put on like a UTM parameter situation. You can actually, let's plug that in to the configuration settings variable as well. So it's going to get more and more important to fully map out and understand how your tracking setup can work so that you have all that information, especially if you want to get sophisticated with your traffic sources and things like that.
the configuration tag and in the event tag, both of them provided the same results. The parameter was sent properly to Google Analytics 4. So this whole update with settings variables, but they're like two variables, becomes a bit more confusing for users. Honestly, I'm still learning this myself. So this video is more like an observation of what I have learned and what are my experiments. And I'm pretty sure that in the near future, we might learn more things as more people will start using this. And maybe there are more caveats or more benefits of this.
Cool. So then he's going to talk about user properties for a little bit. Anyways, that's the video. I just kind of wanted to give a couple of thoughts on that and how to use it. Yeah, everything's good. I'm about to officially start working, but yeah, thank you for spending some time. All right, talk to y'all soon.